limitations often breed creativity. It forces you to problem solve in a way that you're not comfortable with. And I am trying to look at it on the bright side that this could be a really excellent way to push some things that I've just kind of been ignoring that I didn't want to deal with because I had all the options that I ever needed.
And Eloise, how about you? What are you finding yourself having to work with now that you can't get access to everything under the sun?
Well, I think that it's the sort of situation where maybe like I would usually kind of be like, oh no, I have to like make this work on like the most expensive piece of like paper that I can like afford at the moment, or the most like fanciest, like the fanciest charcoal or whatever. But it's sort of a situation where now, sort of counterintuitively, I'm doing more work on the less expensive materials, like the less good materials, because I'm less afraid about like wasting them. And so I'm not worried about um like messing up.
I feel the same way. I know that sometimes I always think maybe I should try the really expensive brushes. Maybe they're really amazing. But then I look at the price and I go, oh my goodness, I don't think I want to have a $50 brush because I think I'd be afraid to use it. I think I would get stressed that I would, oh, ruin that opportunity with that really expensive brush. And I feel like if you're, say, drawing with ink and a plastic knife, it's like you don't care. You're just like, yeah, whatever, I'll screw around and it doesn't matter. And so I'm
Um,
not so sure that expensive supplies are always such a good thing all the time.
I can confirm that I did buy a $50 brush when I last hung out with Eloise. Well, not last, like a year ago, and I've still not used that brush. So that's a very real thing. Being in quarantine keeps you from spending a ridiculously stupid amount on supplies that you
Eloise,
don't
have
need.
you ever bought something expensive and just not used it or taken forever
Have
to use it?
I? Clara, have I? I've got like basically a hall of honor. What's it? I've got a hall of fame of like unopened art supplies that I'm just too afraid to go anywhere near.
What are they? Is it paper?
It's paper, it's like acrylic paint, it's and like one situation, it was just like a really fancy like ink that I still haven't used.
Wow, we got a lot of people in the chat from all over the place. Christina's saying that their studio is their kitchen counter. They have a desk, but I prefer to stand when I paint. The kitchen counter is the perfect height for you. Five
Nice.
3 inches. Cool. Pennington is saying, I have my painting supplies at home. It's a shame though, because I know a mosaic artist who can't work because they can't go to their studio. Lauren, what would you say to that mosaic
Oh,
artist?
oh, oh. Um, there are lots of materials that are right around your home that can be good for mosaics. They're not, tiles, nothing fancy like that, but we've got options from using rocks and stones to old pieces of glass to
Love
even
that.
the little, what do you call them, like those chads from doing paper punching. My grandfather, who was raised during the Great Depression and had that hoarder mentality, created enormous mosaics out of those little hole punch things and a glue stick.
Yeah, and I think that like even people who aren't working in sort of scarcity situations like many people find themselves in now, where they can't leave their homes. But I mean, you have artists like, I think Clara has Andy Goldsworthy up on the screen right now, who is someone who has like built an entire career out of forms in nature and working with rocks and leaves. Or you've got people like Tara Donovan who work with a billion pins, or a billion like coffee lids. So people who kind of um, make use of large quantities of things that are not traditional art materials.
3D Moon is saying, we used to decorate the clay sculptures with shoe polish in school, much cheaper to get the oxide effect and smells great too. Well, you know
I love
something? Somebody in our Art Prof Facebook group actually posted about shoe polish. And I've used shoe polish before when I wanted to create a patina on, say, a plaster sculpture or something. But then I got all curious to see, okay, what would it be like for me to actually draw with it? And actually, it looks really similar to lithographic rubbing ink, which is a supply that I use all the time. And lithographic rubbing ink is so expensive. It's like $20 for this little hunk of rubbing ink. I'm like, dude, I should have been using shoe polish this whole time.
I'm going to try that now. I've never used shoe polish, but I am right with Freddie Moon that I love the smell of shoe polish. When my sister is shining her boots, I'm just like, oh, can I sit near you? I just want to smell that.
Let's see. Lux is saying, my bedroom is my studio. I keep knocking stuff over because I have so much art. That's a good problem to have. And Mariana's saying you can cut out magazines to make mosaics or mosaic sketches. And Pennington is going to pass those on.
As a collage person, yes. Cut up those magazines. Make art out of them. They're so great.
Well, Eloise, what are some other collage materials? Because I think for a lot of people, the magazine is a very obvious choice for collage. You see magazine projects all the time, but you had some really good tips about other supplies or what to look for. Because I know for me, when I taught collage before for a project, my students would just cut out pictures of people all the time, and they didn't really look beyond the figure. So what's your collage tips 101?
So one thing I always do, and again, maybe it'll be kind of difficult for people to do this while they're like stranded in their apartments, but I always pick up like the gallery flyers from museums and commercial galleries when I go through, because it's a great way of getting high quality printed material that isn't necessarily like traditional, like modeling shirts that you might get from like a catalog or a traditional mailer. And then we also had a really great set of like project ideas that we did that at Art Prof that were about using newspapers. Specifically, the New York Times was the one that we were working with. That was like how or different like jumping off points you can take from like a newspaper, like working with text, either as like an actual material to make work with or as an inspiration.
Right. I'm showing right now these images by Ellen Gallagher. Lauren, do you want to dig into these?
Yeah, Ellen Gallagher was one of my favorite artists that I learned about while I was a BFA student in painting. She would take these advertisements that were targeted towards African American women, usually like hair care, beauty products that always have like, some real like iffy messaging in them, some assumptions, I'm going to say. And so she would use very simple collage methods to highlight some of these weird things about these messages. And this out of all the collage work in the world and all of like the current event type stuff in the world, these collages really stood out to me because of their simplicity and their directness, like saying so much with so little, and also their amazing use of the color yellow. Like yellow is Ellen Gallagher's trademark, and I just love yellow with gray is one of those special pairings, one of the special contrast pairings if you're really into color theory.
Julia A is saying, for collagers, keep an eye out for libraries getting rid of old books. I've gotten lots of great material out of free history and wildlife books. That's true, because sometimes the magazines all look the same. Have you had that experience, Eloise?
Yeah, it's like, I mean, how many times are you gonna like use the same generically lit, conventionally attractive like white person in your collage? I mean, maybe that's not really what you're going for. I don't know. I mean, and the other thing is that sometimes, like those libraries are, selling those books for like 50 cents. And it's like a nice way to throw a little money towards the local library as well as get a lot of material for super cheap.
Well, and also
Ooh.
I've done these recycled book sculptures before where I basically give the students a big pile of books. I say, go cut them up and wrinkle and fold. And you can even, if you've got wire, wrap the paper around the wire. You can make figures, you can make trees, you can make all kinds of things. And it's just really cool because sometimes I feel like if you have paper that's too nice, it's actually harder to work with. And I just really like watching the students not just work with the paper in a sculptural way, but to be responding to the images that are already in the book, to the way the text is laid out. And so, really, in some ways, I think about collage as almost a conversation because you really are, as an artist, reacting to what is already there.
Oh,
All right.
Clara, you're speaking my language because I'm all about how like collage is like fundamentally collaborative as a medium, even if you're only like collaging by yourself.
For sure. Let's see. Nancy saying paper shredder shreds. Oh, dryer lint. Woo, that sounds like fun. Junk mail, old t-shirts and clothing. Glennon
That's
Ink
great.
says old music paper. Oh, I bet that would be really, really cool. Yeah, these are such great ideas, you guys. By the way, you don't always have to manipulate the objects because one of my favorite artists is Sarah Z. She's a contemporary artist, and I don't really know how to define her work because she's not really, I guess she's an installation artist, but her work is very sculptural. Anyway, she has these pieces where she takes items and they almost have little conversations with each other. I mean, she's some pieces like this one I'm showing now, where I think she like cut a car in half, which is insane. I don't even know how you do that. But a lot of her pieces, a stool is a stool and a rock is a rock. But the way she arranges them and gets them to speak to each other is really cool. And actually, I love this piece called Notepad, where it's a notepad and she just completely transforms it. It's really, really interesting.
Sarah Z is one of my favorite artists to look at as far as like if you're getting into, I'm gonna call it like more like curatorial work or like a curatorial practice kind of art method, and is really good when you're stuck in your home for those reasons. It's all about the art that's taking place, is all about that relationship between objects and how you can change the meaning of an object when it's next to another object. And I think that it's, even if you're like more interested in say like making drawings or making like sculptures or something, it would be a really good exercise for everyone to do a Sarah Z type installation where they or another artist I'm thinking of is Fred Wilson that does work like that, where you take objects from the museum storage and you put them together to create a new narrative. Like, why don't you do that in your room or in your kitchen? You don't need anything special for it at all. You just need what you already have.
Just put in a little installation on your corner of your kitchen counter. I think that would be so cool. Maybe we should make that the art there next month. That would be really
Yeah.
cool.
Oh, that'd be so much fun.
I
I'd
actually-
participate.
I love that, especially for this time.
Yeah.
By the
Yeah.
way, a lot of the images that we're showing all of you now of all these different materials, we have a new section on artprof.org. It's called The Complete Guide to Teaching and Learning Art Online. And we basically put together all of our resources, but we tweaked them to fit a home studio situation. And so what we do is we give you certain tutorials. Like, for example, we have this chipboard sculpture tutorial, but a lot of people say don't have glue guns, or maybe they don't have all the cutting materials. And so we explain, hey, do it with paper instead, or do this with toilet paper tubes, which are a lot easier to cut. And so what we're trying to do is to give you guys resources that are specific to these situations. Because you know something, guys? You never know when, well, hopefully it won't happen again, the coronavirus, but there might be other life situations where you have to adapt. Like many years ago when I was pregnant, I was an oil painter. And all of a sudden I was like, I don't really want to do that when I'm pregnant because I'm paranoid about stuff like that. And I had a friend in graduate school. Every time I saw her, she was lugging some cool material. I'm like, where'd you get that? The garbage. Like, that was her source for art supplies, which is scrounging around the streets of New York, and she came up with some really cool things. So I think there is something to be said about that. Let's talk about 3D supplies. So, for example, styrofoam cups. Lauren, what could you do with a styrofoam cup?
The styrofoam cup is great because styrofoam's like indestructible. You can cut it up in all sorts of ways with an X-Acto knife and basically shape it however you want, and it doesn't break super easily. So, I like to unravel it and then like weave it together in new ways. I think some of these images that you're posting are super cool. You can get really good organic forms that are a little bit harder to get with, say, chipboard or cardboard because it doesn't necessarily like bend so naturally that way.
And Eloise, let's talk about books because this is definitely time for bookmaking. Wouldn't you say?
This is totally time for bookmaking. I mean, you should all consider checking out our Coptic Stitch tutorial for making your own sketchbooks. As well as our Lotus book tutorial, which is not one that I was in, but is another like wonderful creative way that you can kind of engage with like paper crafts.
Now, hang on a second, because Eloise, in this tutorial, we go full out in terms of dorky book binding supplies.
Oh, that's cool.
We have all these strange tools that I think your average person doesn't really own: a bone folder and a sewing needle that's specifically for bookbinding. So what would you say if somebody says, oh, I really want to try this, but I just have paper and thread and a needle? Like, could they actually do that? Or is it just like not doable?
I think you can definitely do it. I mean, and this is like something that, I mean, definitely children, like people who are like younger should only do this if they're being observed or supervised by an adult. But you can actually create your own curved needles by carefully holding a needle with some pliers, heating it in a candle, and bending it with another pair of pliers. And again, you should only do that if you've got a parent or someone older looking after you. Or, I mean, if you're an older person, like, just be careful. But that's just an example of, and also I think, like, you don't even need large quantities of fancy sketchbook paper, because then there's all kinds of creative things that people do with like non-traditional papers in sketchbooks. Like, what if you had a sketchbook that was all newsprint? How would you make art in that kind of setting?
Yeah, and the other thing I was going to say to people, look, if you don't have the book board for the covers, just skip the cover. I mean, do you have to have a cover like that with decorative paper? No. I mean, it's cool if you want to do that, but I've seen people make book covers, and instead of the decorative paper, they use fabric, or they'll use like burlap, or I don't know, like what other covers, whatever materials do you guys think that people could use for a book cover? Lauren, why don't we start with you?
Actually, I've got a really good one. So this is something that I have since learned to use for covers, for bookbinding covers, but you can use brown paper. My partner does this for like wrapping presents. Instead of using wrapping paper, he just like decorates with patterns on brown paper, like draws all over it, and then wraps the presents like that. And I think that that's perfect for just, make your own pretty paper and put that as your book cover. Like,
but then another thing that you can also do is like experiment with things you wouldn't normally include as covers. Like I'm thinking of like those flat like plastic Tupperware tops that you get, some like the round Tupperware things that you get sometimes, and you could like snip those out and make on like the flat covers and make like a little plastic sheet that could be a really cool cover. I mean, anything that's like got a slightly different consistency from your paper can be a cover depending on what you're using.
You can use plexiglass even. You have the ability to drill through it.
You know what would be cool? You know those styrofoam trays that sometimes they pack vegetables with? I feel like you could cut that into a cool shape and it would totally work as a book cover. Let's see, we got some cool comments in the chat. Liam is recommending Lisa Kokin's sewn collages. We'll have to Google her later. Christina saying they made an awesome sketchbook from a few sheets of arches using Coptic Stitch. Love it. Yeah, Eloise taught me how to do Coptic. I'm very proud of myself that I learned how to do that. Ooh, and Yvonne is saying cereal box cardboard.
I
That
like
would be
that one.
cool.
Good
I
idea.
really like that
Good
one.
idea.
And Christina's saying pizza boxes, gessoed it, painted it with acrylic gouache. Yvonne has made miniature book covers out of polymer clay. And
Ooh.
Pennington is saying an artist who made abstract paintings used palette paint that was covered in paint. They were, oh, palette paper. I see. Very cool. Yeah, I mean, guys,
Yeah.
anything is game here. Like, you really can
Yeah.
just choose whatever you want. It's really cool.
And I mean, this is something that we were talking about before the stream, is this like idea that like humble supplies and limitations are really just fertile ground for creativity as long as you look at it that way.
And I
Yeah,
do think that it makes you work a little harder because I don't know if you guys feel this way, but I feel like there are some supplies that just look great no matter what you do. Like if you work in sculpture, they have this terracotta clay that is this like beautiful, like earthy, burnt sienna color, and it just looks beautiful. Like you could just make a lump of crap and it would look beautiful because the clay is so gorgeous. But I feel like, wow, if somebody asked me, what are you going to do with toilet paper? And how can you sculpt that into something that doesn't look like toilet paper? That takes work. I mean, you really have to engage with material, or if you have like a toilet paper tube, how do you do that? Like, Lauren, do you have any tips for how to get over almost the primitive quality of some of these supplies? Like, they're not as refined as, say, the stuff you get at the art store.
no, they're not. But I think what's really good, or what they're really good for, is going back to what Eloise said at the beginning, where there is less pressure to make it look good the first time. Like they really lend themselves towards experimentation. And I find with my work, a lot of the times I need to go through a lot of experimentation and like rough stages, like sketchbook stages, or using these materials as kind of like mock up things and trying different ways of adhering and cutting and folding before I get to the thing that I really like. So I guess like my um, suggestion is really to like focus on quantity. Just do like a lot. I can't really give like a tip going like one way or the other because I think the beauty of these materials is there are many ways to get to like a nice result, but not, each of those ways is different depending on the artist working with them.
Freedy saying in the chat, all the toilet paper everyone is panic buying. Yeah, we've just realized that because I was like, oh, we should do the art dare should be a toilet, and then Eloise and Lauren were like, no, I don't think we should do that right now because yes, that is happening in some parts of the country. Freedy saying, I'm convinced they are all making homemade sketchbooks. I think of the things we can make with all the toilet paper.
I do think of all of the Amazon boxes or boxes that people are getting because they're getting their food shipped to them right now. I mean, we were all getting boxes mailed to us anyways with like kitty litter and whatever else. That's like a common practice. But like usually my family just throws out that cardboard and it drives me nuts because one of my favorite things to do with the cardboard every year is have my students do this Thunderdome project where they make all of their armor, like this cosplay armor thing entirely out of cardboard. And I see the most crazy like outfits ever. Some people will like glue all the cardboard together and make like a real like solid weapon out of it. Sometimes people will weave things together, like make actual like plate mail, like scale mail. It's like so crazy. So that's another like really easy material that you're gonna have a lot of probably right now that you can just do wonders with.
You're right, and I don't think your students would have done that if you had given them balsa wood that cost $10 a sheet. There's no way they would have been so bold with the material, and I think it was probably very liberating.
Yeah. Yeah, I think part of it is that it is such a crappy material. And also, oh, the great thing about it is because it's like a crappy material, when they go and then do their battle with it, you have to put on this cardboard armor and then you have to like fight to the death. And it's like kind of okay, even though they spend a lot of time on it because it's also just cardboard. Yeah, you're right. Like you don't spend any money on it. So it makes it more fun to test the strength of it too.
Salty Person is saying, to be honest, from what I know, in my country, we can easily live without toilet paper. Maybe that's why it's not all sold out. Yeah, in the US, we haven't quite adapted the way people have where you live. And Ashley is saying, I do tend to get too precious with my nice art supplies. Lauren, I want to back up what you said about repetition because this toilet paper project, I know some people are hoarding this right now, but I got this from Sarah Z because it was an early project she did when she was an MFA student. And I should have gotten a slide of it, but basically it was her own toilet paper challenge where every single sculpture was a single sheet of toilet paper. And she just had hundreds of these all over her studio. And just the mere repetition of doing that one act so many times in so many different ways, you could never do that with a bronze sculpture. You could never reiterate that over and over again. And so this repetition, I think, is really great. I mean, Eloise, I imagine with collage, you probably are moving things in and out all the time. I feel like your collages are almost like living organisms that never really finish themselves entirely. Am I totally reading you wrong?
You're totally right. And in fact, like just a few nights ago, I just had this like massive piece that I was working on and I just like cut it in half. This was something that was like 6 feet wide. And now I'm repurposing those like halves into like new pieces. It's just like a very organic thing. Someone needs to stop me because otherwise it's just going to keep going forever. But one thing I wanted to like say is like coming from like a film and video background, I think this is like a really like something that we see happening on like an industrial level with like this idea of cheap materials because film production changed so much with the advent of like high quality digital recording because like suddenly people could like just go and do things quickly. Like you could iterate instead of having to like buy film and get it processed. And so I think like another like cheap material that people should consider is like using your phones or like using your computer cameras or whatever cheap thing you have sitting around and just try making films.
For sure. And I feel like, iPhones have made everything just so accessible. I mean, my husband, when he was in art school, he was there with the scissors, cutting the film and taping it together. And every time I'm editing on Premiere, I just think about that image of taping together pieces of film. It just makes my head hurt.
That really dates you, Clara.
What?
That really dates you.
I mean, not quite, because like I was part of the last generation. I learned to shoot on film and cut on film. But we're getting a little off topic.
Anyway, guys, just so you know, we have this new guide and we have a lot of sections. So there's one section that has tips for teachers, tips for students. We have prompts, which are particularly selected for home studios. We have the art supplies, and we also have various options for those of you who are teachers, different ways you can run critiques, because I think that there's so many different programs and students and teachers out there. We just thought we would give you all the options, and then you can pick the one that you think will work best for your class. We hope you guys will also go and explore the other sections of artprof.org because there's a lot of cool stuff on there that you will not get on our YouTube channel. And we hope that you will also join the Art Prof family and subscribe to our channel. And thank you so much to our top Patreon supporters who are keeping us up and running. Thank you to all of you guys who came today, your wonderful comments. Please, everybody, stay safe. We will see you next time. Bye.